I recently finished a painting that just might be my favorite piece that I've done so far this year. It was an entire year in the making, and as tempted as I am to paint that tree forever, I want to move on. I could just wait for my next big idea and hope that I have a cool thought in the shower, or I could go out looking for my next big idea. Instead of waiting for inspiration to come to me, I could hunt it down. Instead of waiting for inspiration to come to me, I could hunt it down. Thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. So the reality is this: I've been on close to half a dozen little trips in the past few months, from weekend camping trips to painting workshops to 12-hour flights to Switzerland. I have hundreds of reference photos to work from just the past 10 months alone. So let's talk about creative inspiration and my next big project. If you've been feeling stuck and art blocked or unsure of where to go next, I hope hearing this little update from my own studio will help. The first step to hunting down inspiration and being able to best capitalize on it when you finally strike is to always have a surface ready. The last thing that you want is to find a great idea and then have to wait days or even weeks to execute on it. I'm an oil painter, so this surface preparation process is a little more involved for me. 2 layers of matte medium, 2 layers of Gamblin oil ground, some sanding in between, and about a week of wait time. So whenever I have a little bit of cash, I purchase more panels. I'm not sure this is exactly a wise decision, given that I have probably close to like 50 to 100 panels that I haven't even touched yet, but it does mean that I have lots of options at all different sizes and shapes and ratios, cradled, uncradled, big, small, you name it. My first step on this journey was to pull out a few that kind of spoke to me a little bit and jot down their sizes so I knew exactly what I was working with. Then for each type of panel, I created a new file in Photoshop and tried a bunch of different reference photos on each of them. This is kind of like window shopping, and I'm also seeing if any given composition worked better on a rectangle or an oval or an arch, because you would be really surprised how a little shift in your surface can completely transform your composition. Like, the surface really matters. Usually this is enough to really kickstart me into high gear with a single project in mind, but I was still feeling a little indecisive. And that's how I knew that it was time to break out the big guns. Because there's truly no better way to get inspired than to flip through your books featuring your favorite artists. It was through looking at these books featuring the American Pre-Raphaelites and the Spanish painter Joaquin Sorolla that I found inspiration for not just a single piece, but an entire collection of work. Ever since I moved to California a few years ago, I have been fascinated with the coast. The endless variety of it. California has over 800 miles of coastline and just over 400 public beaches. From rocky granite outcroppings to steep cliffs to sand dunes, add on top of that all of the different possible weather conditions and lighting conditions that you might find, and you have an almost infinite number of possibilities. All dramatic, all beautiful, just about everything a landscape painter like me could ask for. I'm still a little unsure on how I want to add a better sense of magic to this series, but we have our big idea. We found our inspiration. Now we need to capitalize on this momentum and start sketching. This first sketch is a photo reference that I took in Northern California at a creator event earlier this year that I still haven't turned into a video. The weather was bright but cloudy, lots of rain, really intense wind. The video footage from this scene is basically unusable. Like, it is so windy. The rocks are really dark here, and in shadow on top of it. And I think this sketch was a good warm-up, but I'm a little concerned that these cliffs might be too dark to work as a painting without quite a bit of imaginary light. And I'm honestly not that confident in my ability to execute that well. I feel like I'm still very much a beginner when it comes to inventing things in scenes. I like to work with what I see and what I know, right? What I see on location if it's plein air, and what I know happened from the photos that I took. The idea of inventing something is a little scary, not gonna lie, but I think the sketch was, again, really useful as a warm-up. An important thing that you'll see me do here as well is annotate these sketches as I'm doing them, or at least after I'm done. I'm basically just noting down the value relationships, where the darkest darks are, the lightest lights, the obvious midtones, to kind of idiot-proof the interpretation of these future sketches. To kind of idiot-proof the interpretation of these sketches for my future self. Photo reference has a ton of, in my opinion, unnecessary detail. Cameras are a little bit too good. I often take my reference photos like a tiny bit out of focus, even. When I do these sketches, it's not to capture everything perfectly, but to figure out the primary shapes of my composition, where the big value masses are, and how they relate to each other. If I want to change perspective, or, God forbid, imagine something, like genuinely I am terrified of that, I usually do it in this stage and kind of try and figure that out first. I kind of want to figure out where I can create little pockets of interest around my broader area of focus, how I can get the eye of my viewer to bounce around the painting and move closer, rather than just skipping on to the next thing. I want to capture your attention. Yeah, anyway, I'm no expert in art in general, but that's just my general thought process. This next sketch, for what it's worth, is way better. Way, way better. I am so much more happy with this. I'm clearly warmed up and ready to go. I basically instantly get the basic form in and immediately start blocking out these shadows, carving out these shapes. I wasn't sold on this scene when I first started this sketch, but I actually think that it's pretty strong. I'm really looking forward to painting this. This primary The one thing I am worried about that has me considering doing like a master study before I dive into this particular piece is the foreground foliage. I really struggle with grass and brush like this, where so much of the recognizability of it is found in the dark spaces between blades of grass and flowers and leaves. And frankly, I feel like that kind of detailing gets really tedious and takes away from the painterly style that I've been working toward. So as soon as I unlock the skill of solving that problem, I feel like an entire world of subject matter is going to open up to me. But before we get into the rest of these sketches, I do want to give a big thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. I have used them to run my website and sell my work for years now, and I couldn't be happier. So, here's the deal. Squarespace can be your online store, your portfolio website, and your email marketing, course hosting, membership scheduling, and invoicing platform. It can do all of that, and it can do it really well. Imagine a world where you're not paying $1 million a month for a ton of subscriptions, but just one price for all of those features, and it was hosted on your own website, branded exactly how you wanted it to be, and was perfect for you. On top of that, Squarespace's Fluid Engine system makes designing a perfect website tailored to your brand extremely easy. So, not only is your website the hub for everything you're doing online, but it's perfectly aligned with your aesthetic as a creative. It hosts your work, it has your email on it, it's incredible. And whenever I need a sales page for an online coaching program or a 3-day live workshop that I want to promote, I use Squarespace. It is so easy to use. I love the flexibility of their drag and drop editor and the ability to further customize your site with code if you need to. And they're adding new features all the time. If you want to give Squarespace a try, you can support the channel by going to squarespace.com/Kelsey Rodriguez and using my code Kelsey Rodriguez for 10% off your first order of a website or domain. We are now on to our third sketch. I'm a bit torn on whether this one or the second one is my favorite. I'll definitely be painting both. That's not in question. It's just a matter of which one goes first. Unlike that sketch where I did a little bit more of a square aspect ratio, this one is more of a narrower rectangle. I feel like that just helps emphasize how elongated this cliff is. All of these cliffs can be found here in California, all of these reference photos. See what I mean about this infinite variety? It's just, there's so much. I kind of want to hire like a chartered boat to take me around the cliffs from the other side so I can get even more reference photos that are like not physically capable of being taken from the land. I don't know. That's like my crazy fuck you money kind of thing that I would do. I don't know if any of you guys would be interested, but if any of you would purchase reference photo packs from me, like me selling you my reference photos, let me know. I'm by no means a professional photographer, but I wonder if that might even help at capturing reference photos because I'm approaching it from a painter perspective rather than just like a photographer perspective. I always get really frustrated with reference packs that I buy on websites like ArtStation because they're clearly meant more as like photo bashing, like concept art material, and not really as a solid reference for a single scene with interesting lighting and color. Like a lot of it is just very flat, it feels like, and I don't find that compelling at all. Anyway, this sketch is a bit more layered than the others. There's that arcing coastline, but some evidence of past landslides and lots of rocky outcroppings. What I like about this reference photo is how kind of softly the curve is from that big elongated cliff to the foreground, and how much stuff there is going on in that bridge. Like, too often it would just be cliff. But instead we have these interesting rocks, we have this moss, this foliage, this like past landslide. I feel like there's a ton of interest here that's very compelling. But again, I think some of that foreground foliage would require some pretty tricky compromises to really get right. And I'm nervous about that, not gonna lie. Finally, to close off this sketchbook spread, I'm doing a few little thumbnails of Soroya's work. He manages to capture such great color and value relationships in his work. Such a master at creating beautiful lighting and a really interesting mix of edge types that I never really noticed how simple his compositions are for his landscape work. Like, he picks a perspective and he just goes for it. He's not too concerned with making the composition interesting because his brushwork is so interesting. It's kind of neat in my mind, at least to me, to analyze art that you're a fan of and begin to notice that kind of stuff, right? Like, it's very insider's baseball, but I think it's really fun to see how the magic happens. Hopefully you feel inspired to create now. And if you want to keep hanging out and creating together, there will be another video on your screen right now, and I hope to see you there. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.